There are very narrow exceptions to the warrant requirement where law enforcement officers don't need a warrant if, for example, they're an imminent threat of their lives. But what we've said and what ICE has proposed, what the Department of Homeland Security really has proposed in the Department of Justice, is that we can get administrative warrants to enforce administrative immigration law. Now, it's possible, I guess, that the courts will say no, and of course, if the courts say no, we would follow that law, but nobody is talking about doing immigration enforcement without a warrant. We're talking about different types of warrants that exist in our system. I'm sure the courts will weigh in on that, but we're never going to enter somebody's house without some kind of a warrant, unless, of course, somebody's firing on an officer or they have to do something in order to protect themselves.
Follow up on that. Do you believe that you can forcibly enter with an administrative warrant, or would that be a violation of the Fourth Amendment?
Well, our understanding is that you can enforce the immigration laws of the country under an administrative order if you have an administrative warrant. That's what we think. That's our understanding of the law. That's our best faith attempt to understand the law. Again, this is something courts will weigh in on. I won't speak to that. But yes, most immigration law in our country is not done through the criminal system with the judge. It's done through the administrative law system. We're going to continue that practice just as they did in the Biden administration or any other administration. You know, your question on the Insurrection Act is interesting. I've tried to understand this as well as I possibly could, and my understanding is what the Insurrection Act, what invoking the Insurrection Act would allow the federal government to do, is that it would allow the federal government to use the military for local law enforcement operations. Right now, we don't think that we need that. Now, the president could change his mind. Of course, things could get worse. But right now, we think that federal law enforcement officers can do the job of federal law enforcement. Now, what I do worry about, again, is if the chaos gets worse, if more and more ICE agents start getting assaulted, if other law enforcement officers start getting assaulted, that would be a real problem. But again, we have so much federal law enforcement resources here right now. We have so many people here that we do not want to have here. I do not want so many ICE officers in Minneapolis right now. I mean, good Lord, it's really, really freaking cold outside. But they're here not even to enforce immigration laws, but to protect the people from the rioters. That's an absurd state of affairs, and we wouldn't need it if we had a little bit more cooperation from the Minneapolis Police Department. Again, now, to the accusation of racial profiling, look, it's something that we take very seriously. We will take accusations of racial profiling back to Washington. We'll certainly look into them as they come up. But this is not a group that's going around and looking for people who violated the law based on skin color. They're looking for people who violated the actual law, the law of our immigration system in this country. And so long as we had more cooperation, I think they could do these things in a much more targeted way. They would actually know where some of the bad guys are. I mean, again,
Vice President, you guys spoke with NBC News, sir. Your administration has said repeatedly this is about safety, about making Americans feel safer. So what do you say to people here in Minnesota who say it's the overwhelming presence of ICE officers and federal officers and their tactics that are making them feel less safe?
Well, one thing I would say is, first of all, we saw in 2025 the biggest one-year drop in murders in the history of the United States of America. Significant reductions in violent crime. The reason why we have less violent crime is really two reasons. Number one, because we're enforcing the immigration laws and getting very violent criminals out of our country. And number two, because we're enforcing our criminal laws and putting guys who assault and murder behind bars. This is part of a broad effort to make us safe. And the chaos that people are seeing, and I understand there is frustration of the chaos, I'd say that we're doing everything that we can to lower the temperature, and we would like federal and state and local officials to meet us halfway. So much so.
Are you saying that they're not perceiving it correctly? Are you saying that they're not seeing that it's the tactics or the presence of the officers that are
Look, I'm sure that people are seeing a lot of things that would make any member of our national community feel very upset. But I also think that if you understand this in context, this is the inevitable consequence of a state and local government that have decided that they're not going to cooperate with immigration enforcement at all. In fact, they're going to aggressively not cooperate.
If you like this video, then like, share, and subscribe to Mirror Now.